Well, it's been a rough week for the St. Louis Blues. They have lost to both the Los Angeles Kings and the Utah Mammoth this week. So far this season, they've struggled at home. Seems to be one of their biggest issues. In 5 home games, they are 1-3-1, and they've been outscored 23-11 at home. So, I mean, they've also had difficulty finding consistency, both game to game and period to period within games. And a lot of their top players, like Robert Thomas and a couple others, continue to struggle. Can't find the back of the net. It's been a bit of a struggle. So what's been going wrong? Can the Blues fix some of their issues soon? What will it take for them to get their season on track here? We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. It's John and Alec back with you as always. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's where you can find our episodes. We'd appreciate a subscription and a follow, and then follow us on socials: Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of other great content over there. But we're here now after, what are we at? I guess we're at 7 games into the season, 3-3-1. The Blues are, and so there's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of back and forth. The big issue here seems to be consistency, Alec. And so, I mean, I think one of the themes of some of our discussions so far about some of their struggles is just death by a thousand cuts. Like some nights it feels like they go up against a fantastic goalie on the other end. Sometimes it feels like like Hofer especially has had a couple rough ones, and then other times they just can't generate offense. They can't get in the game physically. There's been a lot of issues game to game. Um, so why don't we dive into this week's games? If you have missed some of our discussion so far, you can check out some of our previous episodes, but um, we'll talk about specifically these 2 games. Alec, I mean, what's been going on? Like, what have you seen out of this team this week? I think maybe you only watched the first one, right? But like, what did you see out of the Blues against the Kings?
That was a really frustrating game, and then to see what happened in their next game is more frustrating. Um, the way that they're playing right now is they're just coming out so flat, and I don't know what's going on
Mm-hmm.
about this team that's making them play so flat and so static, but they're not playing dynamic at all. They're not playing with much energy. And apologies if I sound a little off right now. I'm under the weather, but um, I I think that the the structure that this team rode to victory and to such great success last season is still, it requires so much effort, and that effort is not there from what we're seeing. We're losing out on efforts from, especially I think, veteran players, but it really up and down the lineup of guys not putting in enough work to get where they need to be. In that compete level, you can really tell on the ice who has the compete level and who doesn't, and a lot of the time it isn't. Most players, I would say, right now don't have that compete level going, so it's been really a frustrating watch because I know this team is better. I know they can do better, and I know that they're going to play better into the season. But for the time being, they came out to the season flat and we're not ready to play, and that's a big issue.
Yeah, and I think part of why it's a big issue, and I think you hit it right on the head there. I think part of the issue is just that they themselves emphasized the importance of coming out of the gate strong, right? Getting off to a good start. And we've seen other teams in the Central do that. It seems to be the Colorado and the Utah show in the Central right now. The Blackhawks also look like a more interesting team to watch than they have in a while. So it's, um, in a tough division, arguably the most difficult division in the league, a strong start is important. We saw how valuable that was for Winnipeg last year. We saw how valuable that was for some other teams around the league getting off to strong starts, and so it's something they preached. I mean, literally from the get go, from the beginning of the offseason, I think literally their very first press conference after losing in the first round of the playoffs, they were talking about let's get out of the gate strong this upcoming season. We saw how well that worked for a lot of teams, and that's something that we want to replicate. So I think the fact that it's something that was emphasized by them and by us as well so much throughout the summer, I think makes it a little bit more frustrating. But I mean, I would agree that it seems to just be a lack of consistency is the big one, and then a lack of identity I think is another one that maybe we can get into today. That was a big part of their season last year was having a strong identity, having a strong team culture, and so that um, they didn't take the losses too hard, and that they adjusted to them, but they didn't take the wins, and rest on their laurels, which seems to be something that's it's something that Jim Montgomery has pointed to already in this early part of the season. So I think that's potentially another issue here, just consistency and a lack of identity. But getting into these games specifically, I think they were lucky to get a point out of this Kings game.
for
They
sure.
they took it to overtime. It was a 2-1 loss in OT. OT didn't last very long, but they made it there on a third period goal by Justin Falk. They just I mean, this seems to be the issue. They just come out of the gate flat, like you said, in a lot of these games. And so, first two periods, they only had 8 shots on goal against the Kings, and they went most of the second period, I believe, around 15 minutes and 51 seconds or so, without a single shot on goal at one point in the second period. So I mean, you're not going to win. You're not going to win like that, right? That doesn't really need to be said. But especially against a team where the opportunity was there. LA was struggling to start the year. They were desperate, and their goalie, who was a Vesna finalist last year, sure, um, he was coming. It was his first game back from injury, so he was out of practice at least against NHL level competition. They had an opportunity to get a big win there against one of the more consistent teams of the past few seasons, I would say, at least in the regular season. And so to see them struggle like that was definitely tough. I'm glad they at least got a point. I started to believe towards the end of that one that maybe they could get a win. I think towards the end, I mean, I would argue that it looked better. They started to generate some more expected goals at the start of the third period. About halfway through the third period, they got a little bit of a boost, and then from there on out, it was just a little bit flat. So um, happy they got a point for sure, but that was tough. And then moving on to this Utah game, I mean, it was some of the same issues, even more glaring. So they just gave up. They gave up 4 goals in the first period, and it was a pretty atrocious third period. I will say. I think after the third, I was texting you about this, Alec, because you weren't able to watch this one. The 2 periods after that, I mean, especially I want to say it was the the first half of the second. It felt like the first half of both periods they just came out really strong. They looked really good, and then they just kind of got flat by the end of both of them. But it was some of the better hockey I've seen them play at periods. And again, I mean, they put themselves in a 4-0 hole uh, within like 9 minutes or something. I mean, or with 9 minutes left in the first. It was horrible. It was like the Logan Cooley game, and he had a natural hat trick. So it's really tough to go down so early like that against a Central Division opponent. Um, but I mean, Utah looks legit for sure. But again, they just came out flat, and they just it felt like I don't know if it was poor game planning necessarily. I think it was more just poor execution on the part of the players. I would say because they just looked like they weren't ready to engage in that game and get intense about it, and that's something they're going to have to break themselves out of.
Yeah. And kind of a bigger point I want to make about how this team is looking so far and how they're playing is they seem so happy to play on the boards and just play really passive hockey and let the last season the structure was so effective because they were dictating the pace of play and they were dictating when rush chances got to start and when and allowing defense to beget offense and really
Hmm.
putting so much effort on the defensive end of things. And I don't mean to harp on this too much, but I really do think it's important as to why we're seeing a failure of a start so far. I think it's safe to say a 500 percentage is or just over is a failure to start the season for the high expectations we had. Um, and I think part of that is because they're playing on the board so much. They'll and the reason for that is they're playing into their opposing team's structure rather than letting their own structure dictate the pace of play. They're allowing the other team to trap them on the boards and just ring it around, back and forth all around
Hmm.
because that's the low danger areas. The other team is perfectly happy to let the Blues live in that world because they're not going to do much danger from that point.
Hmm.
But now, um, getting into like especially when they gain the offensive zone, how many times have we seen dump it in deep, weak forecheck, and then it's either a giveaway or like a turnover, or it just stays on the boards, between numbers disadvantages. You got one player chasing after two, one blue skater being chased by two opposing skaters, passes it up the boards the other way, and you've got one blue skater being hampered by two opposing skaters again, because that style of hockey just doesn't allow for much offensively to develop. Um, and I think that's just allowing teams to have their way with the Blues and put up these gaudy goal totals because they have such an advantage there and they're within the structure of how the game is being played. They have such a developed chance already, like free given to them on the ice. And I think that's another reason why we're seeing such a flat start from the Blues so far.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and to the extent that they are allowing other teams to dictate and sort of impose their style upon the Blues, I think part of the issue is that I don't know that the Blues really have a style or a system that's fully developed quite yet to impose on their opponents. I think
Yeah.
that going back to that identity point being so pivotal for them last year, um, I would argue that they've just had trouble developing that this year, and it's something that they, I believe, talked about after one of these losses. I've seen some quotes about each year you've got new guys in the room, and the expectations are different, and so the identity changes. I think this is sort of where we can make a distinction between identity and culture or whatever. I think the like team culture can be a little bit more constant season to season, but team identity, it feels like something that might change. Like last year, they were rough and tumble, kind of low expectations, and surprised a lot of people. And they were the underdogs. And I think that isn't quite as true as it was this time last year. And so they're maybe having to grapple with um, at least mentally developing that new style and that new system. And so I wonder how much that is playing into it. But just in terms of the quality of hockey being played on the ice and not just those intangibles, it's also been rough. It feels like, and we can sort of, as we get into our discussion today, bring out some specific stats to sort of back up what we're talking about. But it feels like the biggest things for me Outside of a few exceptions, it feels like they have had really they've had a really hard time sort of communicating, whether verbally or non-verbally, sort of communicating with each other, getting a play established. It feels like passing just hasn't been it just hasn't uh, really worked for them. Like it was thrown in really sharp relief against Utah yesterday because they were just crisp and they were connecting on everything. They looked like a really solid hockey team, and I think there'll be some trouble this year around the league, and it's um, on one hand it's kind of exciting to see a young team turn the corner like that, but on the other it's going to be tough for the Blues, who are probably going to be battling with them. Um, at least battling in a similar zone of the standings with them for most of the season. At least that's sort of what we're thinking to start the season. So seeing them with their style of hockey, it was quick and it was crisp and they were connecting. It just sort of shone even more light on the fact that the Blues just really don't look that way. I think the passes look sloppy. They're passing into traffic way too much. Um, I think one thing that they do a decent job of, not a great job of, but a decent job of, is when they do give up a bad pass and it leads to a turnover. I think they can often recover pretty well, or try to like build off of that mistake and correct it. But by the time they get the puck back, if they get the puck back, that former play was dead, and sometimes it can interfere with an exciting development, and so that's been really disappointing to see them turn it over like that. Just breaking into the offensive zone has just been it's been rough. It's been really rough, and it's something that we've talked about before. But just as they move through the neutral zone, I thought it looked a little bit better at times last night, moving through the neutral zone. But I would still argue that getting set up in the O zone has been a weak point for them. So that's it's not what you want. You're not going to score a lot when that's something that you consistently struggle to do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I like the way you put that, that it's the way that it's the simple things that they're messing up on. It's
Yeah.
passes through the neutral zone, like you said, and just passing in general has just been, like you said, a weakness. Um, and I find all of that to be concerning. Why this team is still at this point not ready for the season. It's something that I am honestly struggling to rationalize because Jim Montgomery is and is supposed to be one of the best offensive or just one of the best head coaches in the National Hockey League, and he showed it last season. But for a team to come out flat like this, I wonder. I saw earlier in the chat, Rob put in, you got to wonder, they've had two good coaches now. It's got to be a personnel issue more than a coaching issue. I still don't know that I believe in that. I think this is partially on the coaches to not come out ready. And I think their struggles on the power play have been a very similar uh, example of that. So
Hmm.
I still believe in Monty. I still have all the faith in the world that he can turn this ship around, but this is the first real blemish on his report card, and it's a pretty big one.
Yeah, I guess first real blemish in his tenure as Blues head coach, at least. And yeah, I think struggling to come out of the gate is maybe a knock on him. Um, Speaking of Monty, I wanted to talk about some of the comments coming from him and some of the players as well, but mostly some of the stuff that he has been talking about this week, and sort of dissect this a little bit. Um, so just to sort of break down the timeline, they obviously played a great game against Dallas. That's the one home game they have won this year. Um, and the nature of the schedule was they had an off day and then a day of practice, and then uh, the following game was LA was the next day. So um, in that practice in between, Monty came before the media and said that practice wasn't great. He just kind of mentioned, like, said it kind of offhand as he got on stage, or I guess got to the mic or wherever. When they asked him why, he said that the quote politically correct reason was that they get happy after they win games and they don't practice the right way. And that's sort of getting back to that consistency issue, I think, whether it's, game to game, whether it's after a loss or after a win. Um, it's something that they need to be careful of. After you win, you can't just, like I said a few minutes ago, rest on your laurels and sort of coast into the next game. And so, um, what I am happy about is that that's something that he has pointed to, and has identified this early on. Because if that is like a significant issue for this team, it's going to need to be nipped in the bud for sure. And then after the loss to the Kings, the following day, he's just sort of expressed frustration with the inability to start on time at the beginning of the game. And while they had a game plan, he felt that they didn't execute it. Getting back to that point I mentioned a couple minutes ago as well. And specifically, the areas of the game that he was talking about were one-on-one battles, particularly in contested areas, like at the net front or against the walls. He wanted them to play firmer, and he wanted them to play faster. He just kind of felt that they were slow. So, any thoughts on that, Alec, in terms of consistency game to game, consistency in practice, and then just maybe feeling too high or too low after a performance like the one against Dallas, or maybe the one against. I mean, I think their response to that Chicago blowout was a good one. They came out and played really well against Dallas. And so if that's the way they can respond to a blowout loss, then I think that's a good thing. But you have to be able to respond well to a solid win as well. So what are your thoughts on the Blues' consistency game to game and like throughout the week when they have off days and practice days and things like that?
It's definitely a big issue. I do like that Monty is calling out that they had a bad practice. That to me it does put it more on the personnel rather than the coach. But yeah, I think it's starting from the bottom, and it's clear that the loss that they suffered in Game 7 was not still enough of a message for this team
Yeah,
to um, learn what it takes to win in the National Hockey League, because they clearly don't have the character of a consistent winning team just yet. And that's something that's going to have to come in season now that and I think they've had some statement games and some character building moments, but I think that a lot of us had hoped that that development would already be there given how the season ended last year, and that isn't the case. So I think it is kind of a personnel issue, and the leaders have to step up and start to take this seriously, because it's right now it's not good enough, and it falls on the veteran players to step up and be leaders in moments like these. So I'll be looking for reports out of camp to see if guys like Robert Thomas or Braden Shen or Justin Falk are going to Monty or are having meetings with the players or something, because that's what it's going to take. And they haven't done that.
yeah, for sure. And then on to that same point, he talked about in I think that same media availability after the Kings game, just accountability as a big thing, and as a big way to get back into it. I think that's something that has been reflected by the projected lineups that he has put out game to game. It feels like he is trying to hold some players accountable and reward others, and really doesn't seem to be set in anyone's role. I would argue the only roles that are set right now are Pareko top pair and Thomas top line. And within the games, as the game develops, you start to see the way they're deployed, their time on ice start to look a little bit more familiar at times. But um, I think he is trying to shuffle things up and try new things, try to build some chemistry, and I think it's worked in areas. I would argue that third line has looked really good. The Suter line, whenever he gets to play with Snuggerud and Matthew Joseph, I think that's been pretty effective. I've been pretty pleased with that line. Um, I've been really pleased with the top pair. I think Pareko and Fowler look great. Um, but otherwise, it seems like they are trying to find some of that consistency. And so, in terms of accountability, he also said, players holding coaches accountable too. So it wasn't just the kind of thing where he was talking about blame is on the players and things like that. So I think what I like about Monty is that he always seems to say the right things, and I think from what I have seen and heard about his message to the players as well, he sort of means what he says and conveys that to his team as well. So I think he's saying the right things. At least after that Kings game, those are some of the things he said. Looking after the Utah game as well, I think he sounded a little bit more optimistic, and I think the reason was that okay, we know we have this issue that we can't come out of the game strong, and that's been a unfortunately it's been a theme a lot of the season. I think the number is I've got it written somewhere. Um, Maybe I deleted it, but they're being outscored like in the first period, I think something like 3-11, I want to say. And so again, they're just coming out really flat. And so beyond that issue, he sounded a little bit more optimistic about the fight that this team has and their ability to get back in that game against Utah. I mean, I will say that after they came within one goal and it was 4-5, I thought they were going to win that game. I'm going to be real. I thought they were going to pull it out, particularly after that Broberg wraparound. I was to put it within one. I felt like they were buzzing and that they had the momentum, and I think they did, but they just went out and gave up an ugly one again. And it was I mean it was a power play goal, so they just kind of were a little bit sloppy, gave up a power play, or a penalty and a power play goal, and so it just kind of sucked the momentum out. But I think they did a good job of responding to those issues. They came out and played a much more physical type of game that we're used to seeing them playing. In that second period, they came out strong. The Mammoth couldn't really get anything together to start the second period. They kind of got lucky with the goal to end the period. The Blues it was all Blues second period. I will say, and they were throwing hits around, and it started to work. Pius Suter scored, and then who was the second goal? I want to say it was Buchnevich's first goal of the season, and then Nathan Walker on a beautiful setup from Oscar Sundqvist, and then Philip Broberg looked really good to end the game on both sides of the puck. He sort of chased down a breakaway and threw his stick around the guy to prevent a shot, and so he had a great game. I think a couple others had a good game. But anyways, they obviously still lost. They couldn't put it together. But I think what I'm trying to say is they responded well, and so I think there is some progress in some areas. Do you have any thoughts on some of Montgomery's comments, sort of game to game, and um, any thoughts on some of those points of accountability, and then some reasons for optimism based on last night's you know final two periods, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of reasons for optimism, I still see that last year's team in there. I
Yeah.
still see a good hockey team in the the heart of this of this hockey team. Like I
Hmm.
still see a really high potential here. They just and the reason for that is because you see moments of it and you see flashes of it. You see periods of great hockey play where they play physical and they kind of dominate puck possession and they don't allow a lot of chances and they're blocking shots. And even you see individual games like against Vancouver or against Dallas where they play like it for the full 60 minutes. Um, so I think there is reason for optimism with this team. I really like their chances to turn it around just because Jim Montgomery is such a great head coach.
Hmm.
And you got to think that they at some point they're going to realize that the level they're playing at right now is not good enough for the playoffs, and the playoffs are where they want to go.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm hopeful that they can turn it around, and not just recklessly hopeful. I actually have a reason to think that in that they've shown this level of play in season so far. They just need to find that consistency, and that's been the biggest thing on the season that they don't have, like we've been talking about, don't have an identity, don't have any consistency. But it's in there. Like I'm telling you, it's in there for this team. They just need to find a way to clean it up in practice and play the right way on every given night. It's early still, but we're starting to exit that territory to where you can just brush off everything as early games. Um, and I'm still choosing to be hopeful. I'm still choosing to be positive about this team, uh, because they usually do take time to gel together, anyways. But it's been bad looking so far, or it's been not good enough, I should say, because there are moments of good within there. Um, so I am hopeful for this team that they can just become a more consistent winning club because they've shown the ability to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism, and look, we're only 7 games in. There's a lot of hockey to be played left, and I think it's still way too early to hit the panic button, and it's precisely for the reason you said. There have been good games. There is good hockey being played at times here, and so um, it's just. I mean, I've said this word a lot tonight already, but consistency, consistency, consistency. It's like that's the big thing for them right now. Um, and they're 3-3-1. It would be different if they looked. I mean, like I'd be more concerned if they were 1-4-2 or something. Like if it was the wins were a lot harder to come by. They've done a good job of, I think, at least treading water before until they can figure out what their brand is or their game is and find that consistency. Um, and they're I think they're tied with the Dallas Stars right now. I don't think the Dallas Stars are gonna bottom out this year. I know the Blues aren't the Dallas Stars. It's not what I'm saying, but like there are other teams struggling, and it's just a matter of getting into the grind and the rhythm of the season. I think the Blues have a tendency to start slow, and so I think um, for those reasons there is cause for optimism and the thought that there could be brighter days ahead. And then just to sort of throw some stats into this too, because I think some of their underlying metrics actually look really good. And so I think it could be an indicator that they're getting a little unlucky at times, maybe getting some poor goaltending at times, that kind of thing. Um, and not to fault the goalies or anything like that. I mean, Hofer has had a couple rough games, and Binner has had one or two rough performances as well. That's gonna happen. So they're gonna need. It's gonna happen every once in a while, but it shouldn't be happening at this rate. And so they're gonna need their goalies to stabilize a little bit. But in terms of the skaters, the way they're playing actually looks pretty good. And so just to talk about some of these metrics, I mean they're fifth in the league in expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. Like the quality of hockey that they're playing, the quality of chances that they are taking and giving up are are good for them. Like it looks decent for the Blues. They're ninth in Corsi percentage, and that can sometimes be a better predictor of future success than expected goals. So, but it's right around there. It's top 10, right? And so that's pretty good. Um, One of their struggles early on was poor net front presence. I think they've done a solid job of getting to the net front more at 5-on-5. They've got 4 rebound goals, and that's 28% of their goals for are coming from rebounds. They lead the league in both of those stats. They've only allowed one rebound goal against, and they've got 22 high danger shots for. That's tied for second. They've done well at 6-on-5. They haven't allowed a goal. They've only allowed like just under point 0.3 expected goals, and then the the PK looks okay. They've got a poor percentage, but the underlying metrics all look solid. They're like top 5 in a good way in Corsi allowed, expected goals allowed, high danger chances allowed, that kind of stuff. Like the quality of hockey that they're playing has looked good at times. It really has. It just seems to be uh, some fluky things at times, or just a complete breakdown at other times. Um, but in terms of like their season averages, um, I think I think things look okay. The underlying metrics, and that's not what counts. Obviously, the actual goals allowed and goals for is what counts, and so they're going to need to sort of just sort of even out and regress back to the mean, and get some execution going. But there are some hope. There are some reasons for hope when you kind of look under the hood a little bit.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on some of those metrics? Why you think maybe the underlying stuff looks better than the results we're getting? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the we've talked ad nauseum about why the underlying or why the metrics aren't translating is because they're just playing lazy hockey and aren't are not generating many real high danger chances. But they, like you said, I think the expected goals percentage and the Corsi percentage are the ones that stand out to me the most,
Hmm.
because this team is doing things the right way in that they're creating these like quick hitting one-off chances that go the other way quickly before they inevitably turn the puck over again. And they are, like you said, one of the best teams in the league in expected statistics here, but just don't have that compete yet. They don't have that drive to win these games and to that fight to push through and close out tough games. Um, for whatever reason, they just haven't been able to translate that into real success yet. And I think it's coming, like I said earlier, and I think that I am hopeful for not just, you know, nothing. I think that there's actual good reason, like you're citing with these statistics, to believe in what this team can be. It's just that they have to get out of their own way sometimes, like trying to be
Hmm.
too cute or just playing lazy on the boards. And I think that their forecheck hasn't been nearly good enough. And that's been the biggest thing is that their forecheck needs to step it up. If
Hmm.
that's how this team is going to win, that's how they previously were winning. Um, I expect better effort on the forecheck from all these players,
Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
yeah, just I think that that's how you win tough games is by being a tough team, and they haven't shown that they're a tough team yet this year.
I agree. I think yeah, we're starting to get into a little bit more of areas for improvement and what we want to see out of them next. I think the forecheck is a great one, and really their entire transition game as a whole. Um, it's something we've harped on a little bit, so I don't want to overdo it with that one, but it does feel like there are some issues in like transitioning into the offensive zone and on the forecheck as well, and so. Um, that is something I want to see out of them. That is something I want to see improve. And maybe getting Alexei Toropchenko back from injury will help with that. I think he's a decent forechecker, so maybe he can jumpstart something. But yeah, I mean, you really want. I want to see them play wire to wire with a little bit more, like you said, grit and fight and toughness and intensity. They've got too many guys that know how to throw some hits around on this roster. Braden Shen, Dylan Holloway, Jake Neighbors. I mean, the list goes on. That whole, I mean, Sonny and Walker especially. They've got too many guys that have toughness as like a big part of their game, and that edge as part of their game to be kind of, I don't want to say rolling over. I think that's a little bit tough, but just like um, it's not that they've been getting out physical necessarily. It's just that they should be the one out physicaling their opponents night to night, at least more consistently. And so um, that's got to be an element to their game, and I think that's going to help on establishing the offensive zone if they can play with some of that fire. Um, so that's a big point for me. Um, yeah. So I mean, another. Do you have any other thoughts on that, or if not, I've got another point to talk about here.
I think we can move on.
Yeah. So I mean, Matt in the chat pointed it out. Like, um, there have been, granted, there have been some struggles on the third pair. Tyler Tucker has looked solid at times. Matthew Kessel has looked okay at times. Logan Mayu seems to be kind of the go to the scapegoat for a lot of Blues fans almost. And it hasn't looked good, I will say. I do think he played better last night. I noticed him have a couple solid plays, a couple in the offensive zone. I will say, like, he looked a little bit dangerous in the O zone, which I really liked. Defensively, still not the best. It is going to take time. He's only going to get better by playing, though. And I think there is steadily a little bit of progress, and so I'm so it's something we've talked about. I don't think we really need to exhaust that, but some of those struggles on the third pair have led, especially over the past 2 or 3 games, they have led to. I mean, really, these past couple of games, it's been very noticeable. They have just been really riding their top four um, defensemen. I mean, last night, Philip Broberg and Justin Falk both played around 23 minutes. Cam Fowler played 26 minutes, and Colton Parayko played 25. Or excuse me, that was against the Kings. And then last night against Utah, the story was pretty similar. So Philip Broberg, 22 minutes on ice. Justin Falk, 22. Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko both played around 21 minutes. And then they're deploying Logan Mayu 10 minutes, Tyler Tucker 14 minutes. It makes sense to deploy your better guys more often. That's not. I'm not saying that the split should be even, but that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to play your best guys 25 minutes a night. Some of whom, my eyes are on Cam Fowler, who hasn't done it in a while, and Philip Broberg, who hasn't really done it consistently because his career is so young. Um, those, like, it's just not going to be sustainable to be riding those guys into the ground. And so what are your thoughts on this? I mean, my question is, and I think it's popped up in some other Blues fans' minds. I think some of my concerns around this blue line deployment is just, are there enough solid guys that you can rely on? Do they need to go and get another, trade for someone? In the same way that we had some of these concerns last year, and then they brought in Cam Fowler, and it really helped. I am starting to think that could be a way to go. I don't think I'm gonna, like, pull the trigger on that quite yet, but I feel like they got to be thinking about it right now. Just given how they're being deployed, it just feels like they are unable to trust anyone else at this point. So, what are your thoughts on the blue line deployment that we've seen, especially this week?
Definitely thinking about how they can improve and what they might need. Being that acquiring a new player, like I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think that's entering my mind as well.
Yep.
I don't know that I'm quite there yet, but it does hurt when you have a guy like Mayu who's had some struggles to start the season, which are more than talked about enough,
Mm-hmm.
um, and who hasn't been able to uh, really crack the lineup and find a consistent playing role. I think that's hampering this team. But a guy like Tyler Tucker has, in my opinion, looked really good in his looks,
Yeah.
and I think he's ready for a bigger deployment. They just haven't played him that way yet. Um, and I don't know. I kind of wonder if it almost is a little bit of foolishness how they're managing these defensemen because, like you said, they're totally running them into the ground, and it's definitely not sustainable. So it's something to watch out for, um, and something that I would expect them to have to find a new solution one way or another, whether it is mixing up honestly, the way that I view it, I think that most likely mixing up um, mixing up the lineups is probably the best way to go about it, just because they um, have, excuse me, they have an ability to do so with complementary skill sets playing on different levels. Um, and I think that um, finding ways to get those guys involved would be really helpful, as well as if they do go out and acquire a new body, that would be another solution too.
Hmm.
But I think whatever it is, it's not been working, and I think that they do have to take a look at how they're deploying these guys and how they can get guys like Broberg and Tucker more involved. Because e- especially for guys like Cam Fowler and Justin Falk, it's not sustainable at all, and it's honestly worrying. So I guess that's my assessment.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them give this a try last night, though. I mean, they deployed Fowler alongside Mayu, and while they looked kind of fun offensively, defensively it was kind of what you'd expect. And then they deployed Tucker alongside Falk as sort of that other one of those other switches, and that one looked pretty poor on both sides. They only saw like 5.5, 6 minutes both of those pairings together before they kind of reverted back to something we're more used to seeing. So there were flashes, at least with the Fowler Mayu in the offensive zone, but both pairs looked pretty poor defensively. I don't know what else. Like, would you say that you'd want them to maybe try something similar to what they did last night and give it some more time, or is there another sort of permutation that maybe you're sort of you've got your eye on?
I would say try to find complementary skill sets and give them more time. The reason Fowler Pareko worked out so well was because one player could do one thing and the other could cover with the other. That's a lot of nondescript word. Um, I would say find complementary skill sets. So pairing up, and I'm struggling to remember the handedness now, but like putting Fowler and Mayu on a line together is like you said, you know what you're going to get defensively. If you don't have that one defensive guy and that one offensive guy, then you could be set up for trouble. So that's more what I would be looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, I think that is the approach I'd like to see them. Um, if the options are, deploy the defensemen the way we're used to and overuse them, that's option number one. Option number two is uh, do what we're talking about here and sort of mix up the pairs, try to find those complementary skill sets, see if you can build chemistry. And then the third plan is go out and acquire someone else. I want them to do that second one, this one we've been talking about. I want that to be the immediate approach with the defensemen. Um, but if they're just going to go out there and play these guys 20 to 25 minutes a night, or closer to 25 minutes a night, these top four every night, I would rather them just go and acquire someone more reliable to sort of eat into some of that time, because they're not going to make it very far if their defensemen are just falling apart by the or by, I guess by the Olympics. Um, so it's something I've got my eye on. I mean, I'm looking sort of the top of the list could be someone like Rasmus Anderson. Calgary looks pretty bad, and so I think they should be looking to split it up. Um, there's a couple others out there like Jamie Alexiak and Mario Ferraro, or a couple others, and so those are all names that are pending UFAs, I should say. So. Um, yeah, I mean, something to keep their eye on. I think if it continues to look this rough, that's something I would want to see on a similar timeline as the Fowler trade. Get it early enough in the season that it can have an impact. And I think part of why that worked so well is that you had someone with experience to play alongside the inexperienced player. That seems to me to be another issue. You had Ryan Suter down there playing with Tyler Tucker, who could account for some of his for lack of a better term, rookie mistakes, and sort of help cover. And I'm not saying that they should go and sign Ryan Suter or anything like that, but maybe finding someone who is a little bit more experienced to take some of that share, I think could be a good approach, and something I think they should, as it's going right now, something they should be looking to do, to be honest. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I think it's just a little early for me to be making calls about acquiring players, but a name like Rasmus Anderson, I think, is absolutely what this team needs. And I think buying a pending UFA too is also what this team needs. I think locking themselves into any more longer
yeah,
term deals at this point after the Fowler extension would be pretty rough. So I think that it's a little early for me to be making calls about players, but I would definitely, if I were Doug Armstrong, be thinking about it. And if they're still around this 500-ish points percentage, in a month or so, like you said, on the timeline of the Fowler trade, then you could start to get serious about maybe acquiring a player.
yeah, and I think we should be clear. We're not saying they should get rid of Logan Mayu. I think we're looking for someone to maybe deploy with him and sort of help him. And I think Rasmus Anderson, for me, as we stand today, would be near the top of the list. I think he kind of fits what they need. But that's another topic for another day. Alec, do you have any other ideas for ways the Blues could sort of get their season back on track? We've talked about trying to find some stability with the defensive pairs. We've talked about you know establishing the zone and forechecking and stuff like that. Any other areas for improvement for this team that you think could go a long way?
Just, I mean, just the simple statement that it has to be better. That the efforts day in and day out have to be more consistent. That's how you become a really good hockey team, and they're not showing that just yet. So, um, yeah, just a simple, I guess.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a good one. I do have a question. I do have a question for you with regards to this accountability point that we've heard Monty talk about. Because I'm kind of going back and forth on this. I like the idea um, of of switching things up and trying to find some chemistry. But I almost wonder if there's too much shuffling going on, and players who are new to the lineup, like Suter and Bukestad, um, or players who are seeing roles that they're not used to, or whatever else the case may be. Do you think there's too much shuffling going on, or would you kind of keep mixing things up until you can find something that works? Because remember last year there was like that run of, what was it, like 10 games or something in a row where they rolled out the same exact forward lines, or it was something. It was a long time. And so consistency in the lineup, it was a theme for a while. So what are your thoughts on how much shuffling we've seen so far?
I personally would keep with it, like, keep with shuffling until they can find something that really works, and maybe go back to what was going on in that Dallas game. Um, but I think that players have to be kept accountable somehow, and I think that there hasn't been enough effort from a lot of these guys. So I like the idea of shuffling the lineup still. Maybe that's controversial, but I think that they haven't found something that works yet. So why would you stick to something that's, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it is broke, do something about it.
Yeah,
Is kind of my mindset.
yeah, yeah. I think that's well said. Um, I think I'm a little bit, if I had to say, I think I'm a little bit in between. I think there are, like I pointed out earlier, there are some aspects that are working. That third line, Suter, Joseph, and Snug, I really like what I've seen out of them, especially Pius Suter and Matthew Joseph. Man, they have actually looked pretty solid. I mean, Suter he scored last night, but he had a bit of a rougher game on some of the peripheral type stuff last night. But overall, I think those two look really good. One thing I will say is that kind of getting off topic here, but Jimmy Snuggerud, man, he was like ripping some passes in high danger areas that it feels like he needs to find someone on his line that can think the game as fast as he does, and maybe it's Robert Thomas once he gets going. Um, but there were a couple moments where I'm like, if there was someone who was on his level of the way he thinks the game offensively, and like the opportunities that he's able to see, if there was someone on his line that was on that level, they could generate some offense, and they probably could have scored one or two more last night. Um, but anyways, I think those areas where you're seeing those flashes and some chemistry starting to develop, like that third line, leave that be because that's kind of working. Um, and then maybe mix and match, and I do think accountability is important. Um, but at some point, you got to do something to get your best players going. And if bumping them down the lineup isn't helping, then maybe it's going to be some consistency. So I don't know what the answer is. There's a reason I'm not a NHL coach or anything like that, or anywhere near that. But I want to see some consistency. I want to see it start to level out soon, I will say. And I'm not saying they have to go and roll out the same four lines every game, um, but it is something that's definitely on my mind. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, maybe not so awesome. I guess we'll see what happens next. I was reading JR's article over on The Athletic, talking about what's going wrong with the Blues at home this season because it's looked a little rough. Um, and he said something to the effect of um, they the reason for optimism is they're going back on the road. And so the games
There you
they've
go.
got coming up, maybe they can get something going on the road since they've been a little bit more effective in away games. I mean, they've only got a couple, but still. Um, Maybe they can put something together and have a better homestand next time. But they'll be playing the Red Wings on Saturday. That'll be in Detroit Saturday night, and then they'll be on the road again next Monday, playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. Two teams who have gotten off to much better starts than any of us saw coming. So they're going to be some tough customers, and so they'll need to be ready for sure. So what are you looking to see out of them after that Pens game? It's a back-to-back. They'll be coming back home to play Detroit again, and then Vancouver. So what are you looking to see out of the Blues coming up? Really focusing on really these first couple of games.
I I did kind of say a while back that I did kind of have a feeling that this week could be kind of a letdown week, and that would be okay. And that'll still be okay if they win 3 out of their next 4. I think things can get back on track if they beat Detroit twice and beat Pittsburgh, or if they beat Vancouver. These are all beatable teams. Really, I mean, Detroit's had a hot start to the season, but I don't think that personally, I don't think that their talent level is this unbeatable wagon of a team. Um, like I think Utah has had a hot start and has looked a lot scarier, for example. So if they can beat Detroit once, beat Pittsburgh, and beat Vancouver, I'll be pretty happy with where this team is at, all things considered. If they can get 4 wins out to close out the month, then that's a solid winning month, actually. So they still have a chance to turn this month around and make a real effort to getting where they want to go. And they have a real chance to do it here with, back to back losses. I think they can go on a little bit of a win streak here and generate some momentum. So I'm pretty hopeful, I would say, going into this next week of play.
I'm hopeful as well. I don't know if, like you, I don't know if Detroit and Pittsburgh will sort of keep this up all year. Especially Pittsburgh. So I'm hopeful as well. I think as much as we have talked about some disappointments with this team so far, I think they have at times shown a good amount of fight. Um, particularly the Dallas game. And then, like, to be honest, they put up a really good fight last night. If they didn't come out and lay an egg in the first period, I think they would have won that one. Um, but they did. So, I mean, really, I'm just looking for them, whether or not they lose. I don't know if I want to set an expectation as far as record goes for this weekend. Whether or not they lose, I want to see them play competitive hockey for 60 minutes. I don't want to see them come out, and especially in the first period. I want to see some strong starts out of this team, and I want to see the leaders step up and not um, not overreact to bad plays. I think they have a tendency. I'm thinking about like Robert Thomas and maybe Jordan Cairo to a certain extent, and I think Booch as well. I kind of have a tendency to whenever they miss their shot or can't execute a specific pass or something like that, they just um, they kind of they react, and the reaction should be to continue to play, and to get back, um, and try again. And so I want to see some of that. I want to see some. I think Monty has talked about this before. I think he's used kind of the term next play speed or something like that. I want to see them uh, not overreacting to outcomes, whether it's an entire game or whether it's like a single play. I want to see them, ready to adapt and get back at it. So I'm looking for some consistency, and I'm looking for strong starts in these games. I think they can still afford to lose a couple. They're going to lose games this year. It's going to happen, believe it or not. But I'm looking for some strong competitive games from this team.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think our next episode will be in just a couple of days to react to this Detroit game, and then you'll see us again in the middle of the week to react to a couple more. So hopefully at that point, the Blues will be on a 3-game win streak this time next week, or maybe even a 4-game win streak by this time next week, I guess. But that remains to be seen. So hoping they can get things back on track, find some consistency, and get in the win column again. So I think that'll do it for us this time. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us get to 550. We're getting close. Like this video if you haven't. Follow, rate, and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then find us on socials at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And we will post on all these platforms whenever we have a new episode or a new live stream coming up. And so be sure to follow over there and interact with us. We love to see and interact with everyone on all those platforms. So thanks for tuning in to this one. We will see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.